Live. And today we're going to talk about an event, and it's truly a grand event, uh, where Jesus cast two demons. Excuse me. Jesus cast demons out of two men, and the whole city united to come out and see him. We're going to be in Matthew 8:28. And when he was come into the other side, into the country of the Gergesenes, there met him two possessed with devils, coming out of the tombs, exceeding fierce, so that no man might pass by that way. Now, this is not to be confused with the Gadarenes. This is the Gergesenes. And here there are two possessed with demons. They came out from among the tombs. They were fierce. They were ready to fight. They kept everybody from going that way. Do you think Jesus knew that? Do you think Jesus knew that this is the way he needed to go? It doesn't say that. But he's going away, nobody went. Interesting. Matthew 8:29. And behold, they cried out, saying, What have we to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of God? Art thou come hither to torment us before the time? Now, please note that the writer put there, behold, for they were amazed. The writer was amazed. The writer wanted this to be brought to your attention. Who's the writer of this gospel? Matthew. Matthew was a disciple of Christ. He was there for this. First-hand account. So what are you to behold when they write, behold? That the demons cried out, and they knew Jesus. The demons recognized Jesus, and they called him by name. Now, what's absolutely amazing is that the demons knew Jesus. The people saw the miracles and believed in him. Yet the religious elite, the leaders, the Pharisees, scribes, and Sadducees, they failed to see what was in front of their very eyes. All right, so the demons, not the men, the demons cried out, Art thou come to torment us before the time? Now, this is fascinating because this hints that the demons know their fate. It tells us that not only do they know it, but apparently they have some idea of when it is going to be the time. They also knew the rules. It's very interesting, for they knew they would be tormented at the time, but that this is not that time, and they knew Jesus was going to abide by God's rules, by God's timetable. Because they said, Art thou come hither to torment us before the time? This really brings to mind what James says in James 2:19. Thou believest that there is one God. Thou doest well. The devils also believe and tremble. All these people who stand around and raise a fist to the heavens in anger, the devils, the demons, they didn't do that. They were smarter than most humans. The demons in this account are afraid of Jesus. They are in subjection to Jesus. They recognize him as their judge, as having authority over them, and they fear and tremble before him. James, the brother of Jesus, says the same thing that these demons showed. That they know there is one God, that they fear him, they tremble before him. Yet James uses this as a way to provoke and prod the Christians to get out to work. For the Christians say, yes, I know Jesus. James says, okay, what are you doing for him? Even the devils know him, tremble, respect, and fear him. That does not make you his that you know of him. It doesn't. Where are your works? Where is your fruit showing you are his? There must be fruit. There must be works. There must be evidence of a changed life. We were not called to bury our talents, but to increase the family of God. Okay. Matthew 8:30. And there was a good way off from them an herd of many swine feeding. So the devils besought him, saying, If thou cast us out, suffer us to go away into the herd of swine. Now let's answer the most obvious question here first. This is not a Jewish town. This is a Gentile area. Don't get confused. The Jews are not keeping swine, breaking the law. Anyway, so a good way off from these demons, there is a herd of swine. Not the most interesting thing in these two verses. The swine are peripheral at best. What is most interesting is that the demons asked a petition of Jesus. When we pray, we call that a petition. The demons asked a petition of God, of Jesus, and he heard them. That's interesting, because we know he doesn't hear the lost until they call on him for salvation. When they cry out to him, saying, show yourself, he shows himself to them. The demons cry out, Jesus, thou Son of God, we know who you are. You come to torment us. And then they say, let us enter into the herd of swine. Don't cast us out just into the nothingness. Cast us into the swine. A prayer, a petition. And he heard them. The demons know him. They call out to him. They acknowledge that they have a time of judgment coming, and they actually make a petition of him. And he granted that petition. If ever you were thoroughly fascinated by the Bible, this should be that time. And he said unto them, go. And when they were come out, they went into the herd of swine, and behold, the whole herd of swine ran violently down a steep place into the sea and perished in the waters. Remember, Matthew the disciple is with Jesus at this event. We're getting eyewitness accounts here. Two men had these demons in them, and they were fierce. They stopped all men from passing that way. Yet when they go into the swine, when the demons go into the swine, the herd cannot handle the presence of the demons. They push on into the ocean. They commit suicide to get away from these demons. The two men living with these demons were fierce. These demons go into a herd of swine. Granted, we don't get a count. We don't. But a herd's at least 15. So they go into a herd of swine, and the swine cannot tolerate the presence of the demons. They run into the ocean and commit suicide. That's interesting. If ever you think the devil, demons, or demon possession is not a bad thing, or that it's not real, think again. These swine, these pigs, chose death over the demons. And they that kept them fled, those that kept the swine, they fled. They went into their ways into the city, and told everything and what was befallen to the possessed of the devils. So they that kept the swine, the swine herders, if you will, they went into the city. And they told them all that had happened, how the two men were healed of the possession, of the demons talking to him, of the demons going into the herd, and of the herd running into the ocean to be rid of the evil. They told of the massive loss of the swine, the money that just sank to the bottom of the ocean. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, they besought him that he would depart out of their coasts. Not exactly what we expected to happen, was it? Now, I know that this is a short passage, but there's a lot here. A lot here. Jesus was traveling. He came to an area where two demon-possessed men were. These men were so fierce they kept travelers from going that way. Notice, Jesus did not speak to them first. He's walking by. The demons cried out. The demons cried out and recognized him from a distance. He didn't have to say a thing. That's interesting to me. Let's go back to the beginning. When he was come to the other side into the country of the Gergesenes, there met him two possessed with devils, coming out of the tombs, exceeding fierce, so that no man might pass by that way. He's coming, they met him. And behold, they cried out, saying, What have we to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of God? They cried out to him and recognized him. He didn't have to say nothing. He just had to walk up. The demons knew who he was. They knew he was the judge. They knew they have a time coming of judgment, and that Jesus was there, and that he's going to be the one to send them into torment. They also knew it wasn't quite that time yet. And it is only the foolish man that stands before God and demands anything. Even the demons fear and tremble in the presence of the Creator. It is only man, in his hubris, that deems themselves equal to God, able to stand and demand and speak to him eye to eye. Only man. All else in creation bows to him. All else in creation obeys instantly. The demons feared and trembled, and he had not spoken to them. The seas, when he was on the boat sleeping, the seas obeyed him. The winds ceased immediately. The whale in Jonah obeyed him. The tree, the earth poisoned the tree that he cursed. All in this natural world obeys the God of the universe, except for man. We consider ourselves the smart ones, and we don't have that kind of obedience. It is only man that denies the existence of God, that makes God in their own image rather than the holy, just Creator. It is only man that foolishly thinks they can control God. And it is only man who believes that they can play by their own rules and ignore what God says. We consider ourselves the pinnacle of creation. Sometimes I wonder. The demons, they knew, they feared, and they trembled. They knew they could not do anything to stop Jesus from what he was going to do. They knew they needed his permission to go into the swine. They know who he is, they know what he is, they know when he is, and they know how he is. And we doubt his existence. We doubt his power. We treat his holiness as voluntary. If only man understood and approach Jesus with the same fear and trembling, with the same respect, the same knowledge that we can do nothing without his permission, his plan, or his allowing it. That we are nothing without his plan. Matthew 8:34. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, they besought him that he would depart out of their coasts. The people of the city came out to see him. They came out to see the wild men subdued. You would think, oh, the joy. Oh, the rejoicing. No, these folks did not want what Jesus was selling. They lost a herd of swine. They heard of the demons cast out. Yeah. They heard of the demons talking, calling this man Lord that stood before them. But they lost money. Did they have fear and respect? No. Did they have trembling and awe? No. They ran him off because he challenged what they knew, he challenged their way of life, and he affected their pocketbooks. They had a passage unblocked that people could now come in more easily into the town. For the demon-possessed would not allow travelers from taking that route. They saw a power hitherto unknown that took and cast demons out of these men. And what did they do? They asked him to leave. But not just to leave, not just to skirt around, but to depart from their coasts. Apparently they had other herds of swine. They met Jesus, saw what he had done, and asked him to leave. Now perhaps herein is the crux of the matter. They were more interested in what they lost than what the two men gained. For while the madmen, the demon-possessed, they were nuisances to them before this, but they were something that could be gotten around, something that could be managed even. The loss of the herd, though, that was a loss. That was an inconvenience. That was a financial issue that they could not ignore. They preferred their swine over two men's eternal salvation. They preferred the materialism rather than the Jesus that could change their lives. Perhaps that's where we ought to end off today. For there are many that prefer not to meet Jesus. They prefer not to obey Jesus for all that they will lose in doing so is too great. The cost of obedience is more than they're willing to pay. They don't see what they gain. Just the temporal loss of money, temporal loss of prestige, reputation, what have you. Jesus can change lives. Jesus can fix the broken. Yet we, the broken, we must allow that change to happen. We must. So many fear what he might make them see in their lives, what he might make them give up, what he might ask of them. And for that, they walk away without ever meeting the real Jesus. This town had an encounter with God. And they asked him to leave, but not just to leave, but to depart their coasts. The question we're going to take away from this today: what will you say to Jesus when he shows up in your area? When he shines his light on you, will you ask him in? Or will you ask him to depart? Because what you're going to lose by meeting him is too great for you to give up. This town, ask him to depart. He could have changed their lives. But the potential financial loss was too great for them. When Jesus calls on you, are you going to say, here I am? Or are you going to say, well, I can't do this. I can't talk to you today. I don't want to have to do this. I can't give this up. It's what a lot of us do nowadays. So which are you going to be when he shows up? Which are you going to do when he shines a light on you? You're going to let him in, or are you going to tell him to depart from you?